Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara has announced an immediate ceasefire in the Sweda province after clashes between Syrian government forces and rival Bedouin and Druze fighters. Shara also renewed a pledge to protect the country's minorities. The recent violence has killed 718 people and displaced tens of thousands. Israel and Syria have also agreed to a ceasefire after Israel's bombardment of Damascus this week. Israel said it intervened to protect the minority Druze community that is split between the two nations. For more, I am now joined by DW correspondent Aya Ibrahim, who joins us from Beirut. Aya, tell us more about this ceasefire.
Well, we saw early on Saturday an announcement by the Syrian presidency announcing this immediate ceasefire in the Sweda province, where clashes between some Druze fighters, Bedouins, have been ongoing for more than a week now, or almost a week now, to be exact. This announcement was then followed by an address by the transitional president himself, in which he condemned the Israeli intervention in his country, the airstrikes that have targeted both government buildings in the capital, but also government forces in the south, with Israel claiming that it has done so in protection of the Druze minority, which is part of this conflict in the southern province of Sweda.
Developments are happening quickly, but as far as you know, what's happening on the ground in Sweda, the flashpoint, of course, of this conflict?
Well, the Syrian president, both in the announcement this morning and in his speech, has said that government forces have now entered different parts of Sweda to maintain order and to protect civilians. But it remains to be seen how the local factions, the Druze minority, the armed factions react to this. And it also remains to be seen if the Bedouin forces then also comply with that ceasefire. Remember, that is not the first ceasefire that has been announced. In Sweda, there was one that was announced earlier, late last week, that then collapsed and then resulted in renewed clashes. So it really remains to be seen whether actors on the ground actually comply with that ceasefire.
Indeed. Where does this ceasefire leave Syrian President al-Shara in terms of his standing in the country?
Well, in the country, since the beginning, since the nascent stages, if you will, of this government, which sort of started coming into power in December following the fall of the Bashar al-Assad regime, domestically speaking, airstrikes by Israel have happened essentially since day one. In December, Israel struck military installations in Syria at the time, claiming that they wanted to prevent these military resources falling into the hands of Islamists, because of course the current Syrian government has its roots in HTS, which is an Islamist armed group. Since then, I've been speaking to many Syrians on the ground who feel like Israel, with these airstrikes, which have been sort of left completely unanswered from the Syrian side, they feel that a foreign country has control over their airspace, if you will, and can operate within the airspace of the country with ease. With the tone of the Syrian president has been de-escalatory when it comes to these attacks, always saying that Syria does not want to enter into a conflict, and always calling on regional powers to try and de-escalate the situation. This particular ceasefire in Sweda comes also off of the announcement of a different ceasefire brokered by the United States between Syria and Israel, presumably to bring an end to Israeli intervention or attacks on the country. But it definitely, this this kind of intervention that is left unanswered is something that many Syrians, that bothers many Syrians who now feel that their own government is perhaps not in control of what happens on its territory, be that on the domestic side with what's been going on in Sweden, or on the international level where they're seeing another foreign country essentially able to strike government buildings without any apparent consequence.
That's DW correspondent Aya Ibrahim in Beirut for us. Many thanks, Aya. And for further analysis on Syria, we're joined now by Fawaz Gerges, professor of Middle Eastern politics and international relations at the London School of Economics, and we welcome here again. Fawaz, let's start with the ceasefire announcement. It calls on Druze, Bedouins, and Sunnis to lay down their weapons. How likely is that to hold in your view?
Good morning. I doubt it very much, sadly, whether the Druze fighters or Bedouin fighters will lay down their arms. They have made it very clear. They have no trust in the new government in Damascus, in particular the Druze community. Whether you're talking about the Druze in Damascus or the Druze in Suwaida, they don't really believe, they don't really have any faith in the central government in Damascus, and I doubt it very much where they will accept to integrate into the central authority without some major reassurances and guarantees to have a role, a voice in the political system.
Well, it's clear this is yet another test for the interim president, al-Shara, and the vision of unity that he's trying to realize. How's he scoring so far?
I mean, I think if you listen to what the new president, transitional president, Ahmad al-Shara says, it's wonderful. He talks about unity, he talks about inclusiveness, he talks about Syria for the entire Syrian population. But there's a huge divide between his words and his actions. What Ahmad al-Shara has done, according to many Syrians, it's not just analysis. He has really built a sectarian-based regime in Damascus. Minorities in Syria don't really have a stake, don't really feel they have a stake in the new system being set up in Damascus. Basically, Ahmad al-Shara has monopolized all power in his own hands. This is according to minorities, the Druze and the Alawites and the Kurds in the northeast. They have no faith in Ahmad al-Shara. So without major actions on the part of the new government, without integrating the various oppositional forces into the government, without a broadly based government in Damascus, I think what we are seeing in Damascus is the beginning of a systemic crisis that could really plunge Syria into a major turmoil and upheaval again, sadly.
You're hitting very hard on this sense of dissension within the country. Is there any way for al-Shara to fully win the trust of these minorities?
Yes. I believe that Ahmad al-Shara could win the trust of the Syrian people, but he has to listen to the aspirations and the hopes and the fears of the Syrian people. As you well know, Syria is deeply scarred as a result of 13 years of bloody war. Syria is deeply splintered. What we are seeing now, whether in the coastal areas in March, or in Suwaida, or in Damascus, that the splintering of Syria, the cries of Syrians for a new political order that takes into account the diversity and includes other communities in the political system. Yet what Ahmad al-Shara has done, he basically established his own, most of the people around Ahmad al-Shara are his lieutenants, trusted lieutenants and protege. And that's why what we are seeing is the beginning of a crisis that could go either way. If Ahmad al-Shara basically integrates the institutionalized opposition, not just the minorities, even the Sunni-based opposition, the nationalist secular opposition has been basically excluded from the political system. So without a broadly based inclusive system, his words, I feel, sadly to say it, will fall on deaf ears. And that's why we have to wait and see whether Ahmad al-Shara basically begins a new process of inclusiveness and integrates the various communities and political persuasions into the new government being set up in Damascus.
That is Fawaz Gerges from the London School of Economics. As always, sir, many thanks.